Jon Stewart launched into his Daily Show monologue with a roar, his voice slicing through the studio silence, his eyes blazing as he zeroed in on Elon Musk, the tech titan now neck-deep in Trump's DOGE fiasco. No preamble needed to snag the crowd. No guest tonight, just Stewart, his smirk tight and predatory, his hands slashing the air like a conductor of chaos, tearing into Musk's role in the Department of Government Efficiency with a ferocity that jolted the audience awake. The room, packed with a rowdy mix of fans, political buffs, and late-night wanderers, erupted instantly, their cheers a guttural surge, their energy crackling as Stewart's razor wit promised a skewering from the jump. What unfolded wasn't just a roast. It was a calculated, brutal humiliation, a verbal barrage that would soon provoke Musk's offstage fury, setting the stage for Stewart to claim a victory that would ripple far beyond the night. He hit the ground running, his tone thick with incredulity and a touch of glee, diving straight into Musk's gig co-heading DOGE, a supposed mission to trim government fat that Stewart framed as a billionaire's loyalty play for Trump. No slow build, just an immediate gut punch. Musk, the guy who'd poured $270 million into Trump's election war chest, now strutting as an impartial reformer, decked out in a custom MAGA hat that screamed anything but neutrality. Stewart paced the desk, his voice climbing as he laid out the absurdity, his hands punctuating each beat, mocking DOGE's laser focus on tiny budget lines, like rural school lunches or community grants, while mega-corporations like oil giants swam in unchecked tax breaks. He leaned into the camera, his eyebrows arched, his sarcasm dripping as he asked the room if this was efficiency, or just Musk polishing Trump's boots with a checkbook. Who'd buy this act from a man who'd bankrolled one side so hard he could have bought a small country instead? The fire built fast, Stewart's cadence a relentless drumbeat as he piled on, his words weaving a tapestry of disbelief and disdain that had the audience hooked, their laughter swelling into a wave that crashed through the studio. He didn't stop at policy, turning the lens personal, his voice spiking as he dug into Musk's recent ex-jab calling him a propagandist, a label Stewart flipped with a grin that could cut glass. He recounted their back and forth, Musk's flimsy dodge of an interview over editing fears, a claim Stewart torched with a flourish, reminding everyone his segments ran live, unfiltered, his tone peaking as he called it pure nonsense, the crowd gasping, then roaring in unison. He paced faster, his hands flailing as he mocked Musk's excuse, his sarcasm ablaze. Did Musk think he could tweet his way out of a real fight? Or was he just too scared to sit across from a guy who'd call him on it? The audience fueled the blaze, their claps thundering, some pounding armrests, others shouting affirmations, as Stewart's jabs landed like a boxer's flurry, each one a dare for Musk to step into the ring. He kept going, his momentum unstoppable, circling back to DOGE with a fresh angle, his voice a mix of exhaustion and outrage, as he questioned why Musk, a man who'd built empires on risk, was wasting time on small fry cuts when the real bloat sat in plain sight. He brought up the oil subsidies again, his fingers jabbing the air, his eyes wide as he painted a picture of Musk chasing pennies while billions slipped through the cracks, a critique that felt less like comedy and more like a plea wrapped in a punchline. The crowd ate it up, their laughter morphing into cheers, their energy a live wire as Stewart leaned over the desk, his smirk daring Musk to justify it. Was this the genius who'd sent rockets to space, or just a guy playing errand boy for a bigger ego? Who'd look at this and see anything but a rigged game? By the break, the studio was a powder keg. Stewart's pacing a restless dance, his hands slicing through the air as he rapped, his voice hoarse but commanding, his smirk a challenge flung into the void. The audience's roar hit a fever pitch, their applause shaking the set, a testament to a host who'd drawn first blood without breaking a sweat, his words already spilling online, clips racing across platforms to land in Musk's lap. What kicked off as a solo takedown was teetering on the edge of war. The billionaire's response simmering unseen, a storm gathering strength. Could a late-night rant pierce a man who'd faced down Wall Street? Or was this the barb that finally drew a flinch? As the lights dipped, the stage pulsed with a restless heat. The clash primed to spill over. The break ended, and Jon Stewart stormed back onto the Daily Show stage, his voice a cannon blast that jolted the studio, his eyes blazing as he picked up right where he'd left off, tearing into Elon Musk's DOGE debacle with a ferocity that kept the audience on edge. The crowd, still buzzing from the opening salvo, leaned in, their cheers a raw undercurrent, their energy a live wire that crackled through the room, feeding off Stewart's unrelenting fire. No guest, just him, his smirk sharper than ever, his hands slicing the air as he hammered Musk's hypocrisy, the tension thick enough to choke on. What had been a scorching monologue now flared into a full-on humiliation, a verbal torching that would soon ignite Musk's explosive reaction, a meltdown that handed Stewart the night on a platter. Stewart didn't ease up, his tone a mix of disbelief and biting glee as he doubled down on Musk's role in the Department of Government Efficiency. His pacing relentless, his words a barrage that hit like hail. He recapped the absurdity. Musk's $270 million Trump investment clashing with his DOGE Reformer Act, his voice rising as he mocked the billionaire's ex-defense, calling him a neutral player while sporting MAGA gear in the Oval Office. Stewart leaned over the desk, his eyebrows arched high, his sarcasm thick as he questioned how Musk could claim impartiality when his cash screamed loyalty louder than any tweet. The crowd roared, their laughter a thunderclap, some clapping hard enough to sting, others shouting agreement, as Stewart painted Musk as a walking contradiction, a tech savior turned political lapdog. The heat surged, Stewart's rhythm a relentless pulse as he pivoted to Musk's dodge of their interview spat, his voice spiking with a mix of outrage and amusement that kept the audience hooked. He replayed Musk's ex-jab, the propagandist, label and his excuse about editing, tearing it apart with a grin that could melt steel, reminding everyone his show ran live, no cuts, no filters. He leaned into the camera, his hands jabbing, his tone peaking as he called it a flimsy cop-out. The crowd erupting, their gasps turning to cheers, their energy a tidal wave that crashed through the set. He didn't stop, mocking Musk's silence, since, his voice dripping with disdain as he asked if the billionaire was too busy counting Trump's change to face him, or if he just couldn't handle a real conversation. The audience fueled it, their applause shaking the rafters, some standing, others hollering, as Stewart's words landed like a prizefighter's hooks, each one a taunt Musk couldn't ignore. Offstage, the storm was already breaking, though. The crowd didn't know it yet, their focus locked on Stewart's every move. Word trickled through the crew, phones lighting up backstage as Musk's X account flared to life, his fingers hammering out a furious rebuttal, a chaotic stream of posts that hit the internet like buckshot. He didn't hold back, calling Stewart a washed-up hack, a partisan clown hiding behind comedy. His words a jumble of rage and defiance that spiraled into rants about ratings and bias, each tweet wilder than the last. The studio buzzed, producers whispering, staffers gaping at screens as Musk's tirade unfolded. A real-time unraveling that turned Stewart's jabs into prophecy. Online, the post sparked a frenzy, fans and critics piling in, some cheering Musk's fight, others mocking his typos and tangents. The consensus growing. He was cracking, his cool shattered by a monologue he couldn't outrun. The tipping point loomed as Stewart, oblivious to the digital chaos, pushed further, his voice a growl as he circled back to DOGE's skewed priorities, his hands slashing the air, his eyes wide with a mix of exhaustion and fury. He questioned why Musk, a man who'd built rockets and rewired industries, was chasing petty cuts while the real waste festered. his tone a plea wrapped in a punch, as he laid out the numbers, billions in corporate handouts dwarfing the pennies DOGE targeted. The crowd roared, their laughter morphing into a chant, their energy a live circuit as Stewart leaned in, his smirk a dare, asking if Musk was serious about efficiency or just playing errand boy for a bigger game. The studio shook, the audience a force of nature, their cheers a testament to a host who'd turned a roast into a reckoning. The stage primed for Musk's offstage explosion to seal his fate. The Daily Show studio crackled with a restless hum as Jon Stewart prowled the stage, his voice still ringing from the last segment, his eyes glinting with a fire that hadn't dimmed. The audience a live wire of energy feeding off his every word. The crowd, their earlier cheers now a steady roar, leaned forward, their anticipation a tangible pulse, their laughter and claps a chorus that fueled Stewart's relentless takedown of Elon Musk's DOGE debacle. No guest, just him, his smirk, a blade, his hands cutting the air as he wove the night's chaos into a triumph. Musk's offstage meltdown was already erupting online, a furious barrage that turned Stewart's monologue into a prophecy. And here, in the studio, the host seized it, crafting a victory that left no doubt who'd won. Backstage, the storm was a full-blown hurricane, the crew buzzing with a mix of shock and glee as Musk's tirade lit up their phones, a chaotic flood of posts that painted a man unhinged. He'd fired back hard, calling Stewart a partisan shill, a has-been coasting on snark, his words a messy tangle of insults and boasts, from ratings in the toilet to fake news puppet, each tweet more frantic than the last. Staffers whispered, producers gaped, their screens glowing with Musk's unraveling, a real-time implosion that had started within minutes of Stewart's DOGE rant hitting the airwaves. Word leaked he'd been stewing since the clips dropped, pacing his office, his team scrambling to temper his rage. But the posts kept coming, a digital tantrum that only dug his hole deeper, turning Stewart's jabs into a mirror he couldn't escape. On stage, Stewart caught wind mid-segment, a producer slipping him a note, his grin widening as he pivoted seamlessly, his voice a mix of delight and disbelief as he brought the crowd into the fray. He didn't rush it, didn't leap to gloat. Instead, easing into Musk's meltdown with a storyteller's touch, recounting the outburst like a bedtime story gone rogue. He mimicked Musk's typos, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he read aloud, "John's a looser," pausing to let the misspellings sink in, the audience howling, their laughter a tidal wave that crashed through the set. He lingered on the chaos, the wild swings from propagandist to nobody watches, painting Musk as a man so rattled he couldn't type straight, a titan undone by a comedian's barbs. The crowd ate it up, their cheers shaking the floor, some stomping, others clapping, as Stewart turned the meltdown into a punchline with a master's finesse. The segment became a showcase, Stewart spinning Musk's collapse into a broader riff, his tone shifting from mockery to a pointed jab. At power unchecked, his humor a thread that tied the night together. He questioned why a guy who'd faced down NASA flinched at a late-night roast, his voice a growl as he laid out the stakes, DOGE's skewed cuts a symptom of a bigger rot Musk wouldn't touch. The audience leaned in, their gasps turning to roars, their applause a steady beat as Stewart mocked the MAGA hat excuse, suggesting Musk's neutrality was as real as a $3 bill. He didn't overplay it, letting the absurdity breathe, his pauses drawing the crowd deeper into a rhythm that felt alive, electric. By the break, the studio was his, Musk's digital flailing a shadow to Stewart's command, a win forged in the heat of a night that turned a monologue into a massacre. The final break lifted, and the Daily Show studio surged with a vibrant roar, the lights casting a fierce glow over Jon Stewart as he stood at his desk, his posture loose yet radiating a steely triumph, his smirk wide and unyielding, a host who'd turned a spark into a blaze. The audience, their energy a pulsing tide, erupted in cheers, their earlier shock now a unified wave of awe, their focus locked on Stewart, eager to see how he'd close a night that had morphed from routine into a reckoning. Elon Musk's online meltdown still echoed in the digital ether, a self-inflicted wound that had handed Stewart the win. And here, with the stage his alone, he didn't just end the show, he sealed it with a victory that rang true and final, leaving no room for doubt. Stewart didn't lean on Musk's collapse, didn't milk it for cheap applause, instead stepping into the moment with a grace that belied the fire he'd stoked, his voice warm, yet edged with the bite that had carried him through. He spoke of truth, of the need to call out power when it hid behind flimsy masks, his words a nod to the night's chaos without resting on it, a reflection on those who unraveled when the spotlight turned sharp. The crowd hung on, their laughter softer now, thoughtful, as Stewart wove the saga into a broader point, his humor a gentle thread that tied the tension to a win they could feel. He didn't name Musk. The billionaire's ex-rants spoke loud enough, a ghost that haunted the victory without stealing its shine. Beyond the studio, the fallout was a wildfire, Musk's posts a viral mess dissected by viewers, pundits, and comics, his typos and tantrums fuel for a relentless online roast. His team floundered, their statements drowned out by the tide. Stewart's initial DOGE jab now the cornerstone of a narrative they couldn't rewrite. Back on stage, the host eased into the close, bringing out a musical guest whose mellow tones washed over the room, a soothing balm after the storm, the crowd swaying, their claps a warm pulse, the night's edge melting into a shared glow. Their cheers wove through the music, a testament to a journey from clash to catharsis, a win they'd witnessed unfold. As the clock ticked down, Stewart took his last stand, alone under the lights, his presence a force that filled the space with an effortless command. He didn't revisit the meltdown. His triumph was the show itself, a clean arc from roast to redemption that needed no encore. He thanked the crowd, his tone rich with gratitude, his eyes gleaming as he lingered on their energy, then leaned in, his voice a mix of warmth and mischief. He urged them to keep watching, to smash that like button if they'd loved the ride, and to hit subscribe for more nights where truth met teeth, a call that felt as natural as his grin. The room exploded, a standing ovation that rattled the set, a thunderous salute to a host who'd turned a rant into a rout. The cameras panned wide, catching the sea of faces, some still buzzing, others beaming, all bound by a tale that ended bold and complete. Stewart waved, the sound crashing over him, and the screen faded to black, a perfect close to a night that burned bright, sealed with a nudge to join the fight. Hey, if you dug this beatdown, hit that like button, subscribe, and stick with us for more.